Well, look forward to that.
He's playing with my foot as we speak.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't, it's a podcast, but I usually make the video available for people because sometimes it's just nicer to see the people's faces while they're talking.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah. I like to see how I present myself too,
Yeah, exactly.
I stuck a sign up behind my, yeah, there we go. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah. I have insulation and construction behind me.
I see that. Yeah. Work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Someday I'll have a nice little backdrop, with like a green screen and you can be looking at the skyline or something. For now.
This is real. Yeah. Do you, I was going to say, well, you're in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah. Okay. What part of Vermont are you in?
Montpelier.
Oh, nice. Yep. Nice. Somebody actually told me when I was, when we were traveling that we should, go to downtown Montpelier because it was the most uncapital capital and a very cool place.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's really nice. We still don't have a McDonald's. Nothing against McDonald's, but there's a lot of neat little shops and restaurants, and it's a capital. So, we have more culture than a town this size would normally have.
Yeah.
Are we being recorded now?
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. You can say, but you can say things that are, like they say things about McDonald's or whatever. It's okay. Yeah. There's no editing, no censorship here.
Okay, well, that's good to know too. So I don't cross the line here.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me how you got into solar originally.
Well, pretty early on. I mean, really, right out of high school, I was very interested in the environment and nature. And the first ecology course I took was in the Air Force, actually, as an evening course while I was in the Air Force.
Wow.
Not exactly a bastion of radical liberals, but even there I could see, my God, nukes are nonsense, and we really need to quit polluting so much, and just sort of the basics. It really helped to kind of form my personality. And I was in Boy Scouts as a kid too. We camped a lot and had a lot of camping skills and appreciation for nature. But you make a long story short, I ended up in Vermont for my last 2 years of college. I came up here for the social ecology program at Goddard College. Finished school, been working, raising a family ever since. So I've been in Vermont since the 70s. I'm originally from Ohio.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. And I've always been really interested in the environment and trying to see what I could do to do things right. I attempted to homestead in Danville in the early 90s on 12 acres of land up on a private road. And that was kind of rough. I would say largely for financial reasons, actually.
Oh, yeah?
And there was a recession then in the early 90s. And that and some other factors kind of led to a split up of my first marriage. Oh, wow. While we were there, we wanted power. And I was inclined to just get a generator, but the electrician we talked to said, hey, you might want to try solar. This was in 91.
Wow.
So we did put together a solar system. I started learning about it. I had to learn how to use it. We were way up in the woods. And it was, I made a lot of my mistakes then, didn't buy enough panels, put too much money into the generator, not enough into the panels, had terrible batteries, but we hobbled by and used it. And then I've, over the years, when I finally got into the position of having property where I could do solar again, which is here in Montpelier, my current wife and I, we got married and bought a house in 2003. And so we now live in town, and we're able to have a pretty substantial solar system off grid, as well as the grid power is here too. Not to be confused with grid tie. That's a different thing. And
with grid what?
Grid tie.
What is that?
Grid tie is the most prevalent kind of solar in America nowadays. It's where you put panels usually on your roof, and all the power goes back into the electric utility.
Right.
And then you're given credit towards your bill. And So you essentially, you're part of the production and you get credit.
Yeah.
And it has many good things about it. I'm not anti-grid tie, but but when there's a storm or your local utility goes down, you also are out of power. You have no backup.
And you can't switch back to using your own.
Your own solar.
Yeah, well, is that because you usually don't have any storage, right?
Right. I'd say probably 95% of the grid tie systems being sold do not have backup storage.
Okay.
You can, and I think maybe backup storage is kind of getting to be of more interest to people now, but a lot of it does not have backup storage. And so we've had in place here where I live since 2006 an off-grid solar system on my own property. And again, I made some mistakes early on. I started off with a bunch of batteries from Walmart and a really overly complicated system with batteries that were destined to die in 3 years. But, so in the late, around 2010, I started taking some classes it's called Alt-E in Massachusetts. It's currently in Boxborough, Massachusetts.
Okay.
It's a mostly web-based business for alternative energy. Very user-friendly for do-it-yourselfers.
Okay.
They actually sell to, give courses. They help train people to become installers. 2 years in a row, I went down for 1 week of classes down there and took the NABCEP entry-level exam. It's a North American Board of Certified. I always get it right. North American Board of Certified Energy Professionals, I think. But
Whatever.
I learned how to design and install photovoltaic solar systems, and came back and first thing redid my own. I learned how much better it could be, and not necessarily more expensive either. But I also decided early on that I didn't really want to go into installing grid tie systems, which is the predominant way to make a living in solar right now.
Yeah.
For one thing, I was a little bit older when I went into this. I didn't fathom the idea of a long career starting in my 50s, climbing around on roofs. That's part of it, to be honest. And now I'm in my 60s. But also, I see a need for something different for people who want something they can afford to pay for, cash, maybe scrounge materials for and buy a few things that they have to. And the do-it-yourselfers. There's a lot of people that like to learn how to do things themselves. They want to make it and manage it themselves and be off the grid. Yeah. So I, partly inspired by Hurricane Irene and the aftermath in Vermont in 2011, I decided to kind of base my business around small scale, affordable, off the grid solar. And pretty often somebody will contact me and they want something larger, and I'm more than happy to send them somewhere else. There's plenty of places. Currently, my favorite place to send them to is Suncatcher. It's a company around here, a really good fellow who's NABCEP certified, has a great background, and he's all about battery-based off-grid solar.
Okay.
But I have a pretty steady group of people contacting me who they want to do something in their camp or their yurt, tiny house, or sometimes they have unreliable power in a regular kind of house. They want some backup. And often I find myself working with them to design a system for them that they will then learn to build, and I'll help them. And in that kind of situation, because it's really a lot of my mission, as I see it, is to promote this, to get people to do their own solar and know about it and know how to maintain it. So because of that, I typically will do it all free except for the parts in that situation. If they want me to obtain parts for them, I get dealer pricing. I can make some money on the parts and still give them a better deal than they usually can on their own. And I'll work with them to design a system, deliver it to their place, and help them put it together, as long as they're willing to work with me and learn how to do it. Then they have a small solar system.
So how does it work? So you basically have two parallel systems.
Oh, here at my house.
serving your home? Well, yeah, at your home, and I think what you're saying, like for this supplemental power for folks who have an unreliable system, how does
Yep,
that work?
yep. That would be the best way to use the kind of system I would design or help somebody build. And I also sell systems ready to go to their
Hmm.
website, small systems. Uh, yes, parallel. Uh, yeah, here in my house, I have uh, another set of wiring that goes through the house with outlets that we know are from solar only,
Okay.
um, with the exception of a couple places where I have switches, toggle switches to go from grid to solar. That's
Okay.
possible. You can just wire it in for that particular light or outlet.
Hmm.
Uh, so the way we live here is we we keep some things on solar all the time. Most of the lights on the first floor, uh, they I charge up all my small devices during the day. That's easy.
Yeah.
Uh, and and then we have a pet tortoise who requires two special lights and a heating pad. Uh, that's on solar because that's a daytime activity. That's low hanging fruit, you know. And then things where you have some discretion when you can use the power, or also the low hanging fruit to use from a battery based solar. Excuse me, such as laundry. Uh,
Hmm.
Charging up batteries for power drills and my skill saw,
Hmm.
using the electric chainsaw. Uh, there are more things I'd like to add to this list. For example, log splitter. Uh, there are electric log splitters, and you can choose to do it when it's sunny, and
Yeah.
and you're good to go. You know, and they. But what battery-based solar, what's tough for it is things that have a heavy draw at nighttime,
Hmm.
uh, or if you just continual use day and night, like a refrigerator is usually in that category.
Yeah.
Or, you can get a smaller refrigerator, and that helps a lot. But the problem is it's always going to come on and off and on, off and on, day and night. And you might have 3 cloudy days, and so you might find one morning your batteries are dead.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's, but a battery-based solar, even here in the capital city, is a great backup for the grid when the grid goes down, and it does sometimes.
Yeah.
It's also, the grid is a great backup for the battery-based solar. You know, it's like occasionally I'm working on the system, or there's some reason why it's not functioning that great, or it's just been really cloudy, and it's great to have the grid too if I need it. But,
Yeah. How much of your power are you, on average, able to supply with your solar panels?
well, uh, it requires a little bit of qualification because when we first put the solar in, uh, this was around 2006. I remember being very proud of the fact that we actually got a couple negative bills. Uh, we our bills, which weren't real high to start with, but we were probably, when we moved in here, we are probably $60 or more a month for electricity. But then we got it down so far that a couple of times this company used to do an estimate one month and then catch it up the second month.
Yeah.
So some of the estimates didn't anticipate we would go so low, so it would be a negative $4 one month, and then the next month we'd pay a $10 or $12 or 20. So that's evidence to me. Even in my early crude system that I built in 2006, we probably knocked $60 a month off the power bill.
Yeah.
Now the reason why it's hard to say apples to apples now is because back then we had propane heat and propane hot water, and we've since switched more and more things to electricity, which might sound odd, but there's an incentive for that. We have electric hot water now. We have basically wood heat, but we I guess we're a little more pro electric, but we try to not waste. We have LED light bulbs everywhere and shut things off when we're done. But so we're kind of using more power for more. Oh, I know the other big thing. I have an electric car now. So
Oh, wow. That's
if when not using that off solar, that adds about $40 a month to the bill. And that could be more if I was commuting, farther or something like that. But
Yeah.
Um,
So how many actual, okay, I always hear photovoltaic, the PV system. Are there other sorts of solar that people typically use in their homes?
yeah, solar hot water
Okay.
is a non-PV, and most of the solar hot water systems in this climate, uh, they have to circulate antifreeze, which then transfers to your potable hot water.
Hmm.
So it's fairly complicated. You have to have some pumps, and we had one for years. There's also passive solar, which is just gets into the design of your house where the
Hmm.
windows are.
Hmm.
Uh, we've done some of that here. We put a bay window in the south side of our house shortly after we moved in. It picks up some heat.
Hmm.
Today it is actually, and then and I think this year we're maybe going to hire a carpenter to put another window in the same side of the house uh, to pick up just a little more direct heat.
Yeah.
And this would be right near our tortoise too, so he can.
Conveniently.
Yeah, as it is, he only gets sunshine in the afternoon, and he gets a little lazy in the morning. He needs to warm up, So we're gonna work on that some. Um, there's a few other kind of nuances to how you can do solar. There are these solar solar hot. I'm sorry, solar hot air panels. They're called. They're It looks like a big old perhaps hot water panel or something like that, but it just has air in it, and you can put it on the south side of a house, and vertical is usually okay because you're not trying to gain anything in the summer. The winter angle is
Right, right. Yeah.
almost vertical is fine. Uh, and you just heat up air, and you have a simple fan, perhaps with a thermostat that blows it in when it's so hot and blows it back out to heat up again. And I've actually considered doing that. I think we're going to opt instead for another window on the south side of the house. It's just, you know, I'm not sure how much you're into window technology, but when you buy a modern window now, uh, it's not unusual for it to be LowE.
Yeah.
You familiar with that? And
Yeah, but would you explain it anyway for
oh, sure,
folks?
yeah. As it was explained to me, there were little metal flakes in the glass, not even visible to the naked eye, but they're at a particular angle so that when the sun is rather high in the sky, coming in from a higher angle, which is summer generally, they're designed to reflect some of the heat and light out, especially the heat. I'm sorry, the heating rays.
Hmm.
So you're not overheating so much from that window, but they're also at an angle so that when the sun gets lower, the same rays can pass through more easily, and giving you the heating benefit. And any glass will help heat a house because it lets infrared rays in, and those are the warm ones. So we'll make sure we get LowE glass and double glazed thermopane,
Yeah.
some sort, and it's really effective. And part of the game to me too in the long run is to reduce firewood usage.
Hmm.
We almost 100% heat with wood here. We have a couple electric heaters we keep around for backup, and there's a propane backup system we just don't use unless there's an emergency.
Yeah.
But we're in our 60s, and I imagine hauling all this firewood in my 90s, maybe my hundreds.
Yeah. Not that appealing, is it?
Well, it might be part of what helps me to live that long if I
Yeah.
stay. But on the other hand, you don't want to have to, stack 4 or 5 cords. If you could do 2 cords, 1 cord.
Exactly.
If I have to hire some young person to come in and stack it for me, maybe it's more reasonable if it's only 1 or 2 cords.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking along those lines.
So how many panels do you use right now for the parallel system that you've created?
We just this year actually I kind of upgraded. I have 4 390-watt panels.
Hmm.
They're on a wooden stand in the south yard, and I made the stand fairly high, but not so high that I can't reach up and brush the snow off in the morning. And these are um, don't know how much you want me to get into the weeds of it, but these are, they're set up in a way that the voltage goes sky high. They're nominally 24 volt panels, but I have them in series, and the nominal voltage of a panel is always a range. Like 24 volt can go up as high as way up into the 40s on a real bright, sunny, cold day, and it can go down a little below 24 and still function. But so these each panel can go up to around 47 volts or so under ideal conditions. I have them in series. That's like negative from one panel goes to positive to the next one. That means you increase voltage. You add voltage. So you add it all up, and it can be roughly 200 volts or so. And that kind of system requires a kind of an upper end charge controller, what's called MPPT, multi-power point tracking. They used to be a brand new, real expensive thing 10, 15 years ago. Now it's kind of the standard for any system of a certain size. Very good charge controllers. As soon as I put a good one in this past year, I could see that I was harvesting energy during cloudy conditions. Even just a little sun and the thing would kick on.
Wow.
And enough to run my tortoise equipment. It's and that matters.
If the tortoise is happy, everybody's happy, right?
We're good, yeah. But and that's lights too. I mean, with LED lights, you're only using about 5 or 6 watts per light. So if you pull in just 100 watts of power on a dismal, cloudy day, you probably got enough to run your lights, throughout the day.
Yeah.
But
and you've got some storage. Sorry.
Oh yeah, we have storage. I have got 4 rather large 6-volt batteries downstairs, hooked up in series to equal a 24-volt system, and it's pretty good. I mean, we can do laundry in the evening after dark off those batteries if we want to, plus all the lights we want, and recharge our cell phones and our tablets if we need to, and that kind of stuff. Like I alluded to earlier, you generally don't want to do unnecessary things off batteries in the evening, because it's just unrealistic. I mean, if you like, I wouldn't have a large plasma TV and watch it all night, on batteries. They use 100 watts or more power. You can use hundreds of watts if you get a big one. And, but a small LED TV uses 27 watts. We don't watch TV. It's not a good example.
Yeah. But it is, because a lot of people do. I don't either, but I know a lot of people do, and that's, maybe they're not the people who like solar. I don't know. Maybe there's a correlation here. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't draw the line between. But this is a Chromebook. This uses around 30 watts when I charge it. I try to charge it during the day, and I can watch it throughout the evening for stored solar power. We watched the debates last night on it. But we have a big enough battery system that if we have to plug things like that back in, it's not a problem. Yeah.
And that's like, for the average person, how much would a system like that cost them?
Well, okay, it depends on how you do it. Yep. If you don't want to learn anything or do anything yourself, you can probably double whatever price I'm going to give you. But if you're willing to learn something about it, and I'm all about helping people learn if they want to do it themselves. You're talking about, I've got just maybe $1,000 worth of panels out there. I got a little better deal because I have dealer pricing, but it's the system I just described to you is roughly $1,000 on the panels, about $800 worth of batteries, about a $600 charge controller. If I was upgrading, I would put it in an $800 inverter, probably a 3,000 watt Samlex pure sine wave. So add those things up, and then throw in another 100 or 2 for wires, and that's what you're talking about. Wow. Now, if somebody doesn't want to do anything themselves, if they're unable to or unwilling to learn, you're probably going to pay whatever that adds up to. See, 1,000. Maybe that was roughly 3,000 we just talked about. Double it, maybe if you want someone else to install it for you. And bear in mind too that an installer is bound by the NEC code to learn the code for the town that you're in and comply with it. And so that adds some expenses that you wouldn't necessarily have to incur if you are doing an owner installed system.
Yeah.
I'm not advocating cutting any corners of safety at all.
Yeah.
But some of the code requirements are designed to, just a little bit of overkill to make sure that unscrupulous people don't take advantage of loopholes.
Right.
Like if I sell a system to somebody in a yurt, for example, it would be absurd if I was hiring my services as an installer and I had to go find the code for that town and put everything code legal. Like, for example, you get to within a certain distance of the building and you have to put the wires in conduit in the yurt. And if I size my wires correctly, no one's going to convince me it's any safer to be in conduit. It is going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
And conduits don't lend themselves to the cloth wall of a yurt. That's just one small example.
Yeah.
So when people talk about do it yourself, and we should always talk safety. And I just stress you need to build your system safe. You need to learn what you need to do that. But if you're not hiring out your services as an installer, you don't have to spend all your time studying the local codes. And in many cases, you don't have to worry about permits either.
Yeah. Interesting. So I did a solar series for my blog, and that was all commercial type solar stuff that I didn't even realize at that time that it was an option to do sort of a DIY solar system. And the prices were much higher. I had a person come to my house who quoted me like $20,000 for a system. Yep. And that was the tie-in, obviously.
Yep.
But,
and I'm guessing there would have been financing available. And pretty long-term financing with interest, of course. So you're talking about the sticker price, and
right.
Yeah,
and that's ultimately why I didn't do it at that house, because I thought $20,000, for this, and the house was 600 square foot house. So I thought, gee, that seems like overkill,
Well, I'm old enough to remember when solar was not grid tie, before grid tie existed, and in the 70s and 80s there were people out there, especially around here in Vermont, doing their own solar. And some people would find someone to do it for them, but it was all battery based, off grid, all of it. So it kind of got me when I saw everything going over to grid tie and then becoming really corporate too. And like a lot of the business models seem to be about the financing, easy terms. And that's a mixed bag. I'm not just saying that's all bad and they're all predatory, but it can be predatory, but it also can be humane and a way to humanely offer people with no money down to get solar. And it's all in how you do it. I won't mention names, but I've seen a couple installations right around here that I think should have been sold to the people. There's a woman I know who she and her husband struggle. She's well past retirement, having to work hard to clean houses, and they never have enough money. The church has had to get involved to help them fix the roof on their house and things. And her husband has terrible diabetes, and he's had some amputations. And she was sold a solar system on the east and west side of her roof, which is ideal. I mean, there can be gain there, and there's all kinds of shade issues. There's just trees all around there, especially in the neighbor's property that she can't do anything about. And I'm sure she had no money to put down on it. And I'm sure the system's not performing well. The roof doesn't shed well. It's not very steep. They're not able to go out there every day and clean it off. And so to me, that's predatory. That's unscrupulous.
Sounds like it.
And but I will say I will name some names for good reasons. Like Suncommon has a grid tie only kind of business, and they do financing, but I think they're pretty ethical about it. I've had some dealings with them, talked to them, and I've had several people approach me who already talked to Suncommon, and Suncommon told them they don't have a good solar site so they wouldn't sell them a system. That's the right thing to say when somebody has a lousy solar site.
Yeah.
You might bring them down easy, but
Say it in a nice way, but
yeah,
don't sell them the
yeah,
system.
because there are people. Well, in your email to me, for example, you're asking for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay,
Yeah.
let me give you some of the ugly. Well, I would say sad is a better word for it. There are some people who really want to get into solar. They contact me, and maybe they just want to scratch up some money and do it, but they have a terrible site. Shade, 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 shade. And uh, you can only mitigate excessive shade to a certain extent. I mean, if somebody has, uh, it ties into your needs, I guess, too. If somebody has a site like, okay, one of my customers down in Rutland, he had pretty bad shade till about noon, but pretty good access for the rest of the day. But that's not ideal. Normally, I would say, that's not the kind of person I really want to talk into buying a solar,
Yeah.
because it's better to have, say, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. access to sun, or even longer if possible, 9 to 3. Those are the best hours. In this case, the guy, it kind of works for him because it's a camp way out in the woods. He leaves every winter. So when the shade issues get really bad, when the sun gets too low, he's out of there. He goes away for the winter. And he has modest need for power. He lives alone. He needs to charge up his batteries for his power tools and his cell phone, and then run some lights in the evening. So he's willing to work with that limitation, and he's a real handy guy too. He had his own car shop for 25 years, and so he's willing to get in there and learn how to do things. And so in that situation, he's got a system with just a 100-watt panel, and he had his own batteries, and we kept the cost down real low for him. I think he had like $300 into the whole thing.
Wow, amazing. So now, how do you go about, you said when the sun was hitting and stuff like that, how do you do that kind of analysis so that when you're trying to set up a system for somebody?
Well, the two ways to do it. One is with technology, and the other is just common sense observation. I mean, you can, especially if you've been living somewhere for a while, where the sun is, and when it's there. And so a lot of times somebody is like that. I have two customers right now that have hunting camps, and both of these guys really know their sun. They've had these camps for many years, and so we know what we're talking about there. We know where the sun is and how long it's there. There's a couple kinds of technology you can use. I always forget the name of it. It's a shade assessment tool. I love this one because it uses no external energy source. It's just, you set a little tripod up with a kind of a grid map with latitudes on it, on a circle, and then a glossy piece of plexiglass over the top. You orient it to true north and south, and then you just stand over it and look at the reflected objects on the glass or plexiglass, and you reach underneath with the Conti crayon and draw the contours of everything reflected, and then you end up with a drawing that tells you exactly where the shade will be every month of the year.
Oh, wow.
It's great. I mean, I'll do that when somebody contacts me and they don't really know, and maybe they just bought the property, or they just don't know how sunny it's going to be there.
Yeah.
And we can take a look and say, okay, one example, a woman here in town, literally on the summer solstice, we went out to her property, excuse me, and it looked pretty good that day, and you could see the sun was around noon. It was right there, and I did my assessment tool, and I could see that in a month and a half, there's a big tree right at high noon that was going to start shading. So that means sometime in August, she was going to start getting shade that would go all year, and it just get worse. And it is a terrible sight. I mean, we've done everything we can to mitigate it. I've given her like a better panel and advice on how to cut the waste every night, turn the inverter off because it draws a little bit of power at nighttime, and things like that. But it's never going to be great in that particular site unless you can get rid of a couple of trees. that are
Oh,
right there in the middle. You know?
yeah. I know where I am, there's a couple of houses, and certain times of the year I get, mostly in the summer, I get good sun, but in the winter, it seems like it's just fleeting.
Mhm. Well,
And I have to
yeah,
do a little bit of analysis to see whether or not I'm going to actually have enough
yeah.
usable, because I'm in the ground also, all the solar panels could be higher. So,
And there's a couple other kinds of technology too. That there's a more expensive electronic version of a shade tool that um, I could have gotten from the same place I got this one at that LowE company in Massachusetts.
mhm.
It's it's like $1,500. It does something like electronically. Maybe it's a little quicker and easier, but uh, I don't feel the need to spend that much money on it, and it's got electronics involved. So
Yeah.
I like to keep things simple when I can. Things that don't need batteries are nice.
Yeah.
You- Also, I've heard that a lot of the larger grid tie companies, if you when you first contact them, they'll just take a look at your site with a Google satellite view, and they
Okay.
can come up with a rough estimate of your sun or shade issues just from looking down at your property,
Huh.
looking at the trees.
Okay.
They're typically looking at your roof,
Right.
and so that's a starting point. And anybody who's in the field can get more accurate than that if they want to. They can come in, but if there's a real problem, a gross problem, you don't even need the tools. You can just go stand there and say, "Oh man, you got trees everywhere," and they're not
Yeah.
even on your property. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what the property that I originally talked to you about is just a little. It's really was just like a work shed kind of thing, but I've turned it into what I call the Annex. It's just like a 400 square foot little tiny house with just a few little basics in it. And right now I'm just running 110, I'm just running a really long 200-foot extension cord from the main house.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's long. Yeah.
Yeah, it is long. And it's,
Hopefully, you have the
every
skills.
time when the fridge switches on, all the lights dim, and stuff.
Oh
But,
yeah, yeah.
so I think, just to put a panel in there could at least even as a supplement, but I just don't know where I could find the sun there because it's all tall pine trees and stuff. And
There's a fridge out there.
it's just a mini fridge, just a
Okay,
baby fridge. Yeah.
yeah, that's um, if you have limited sun, the refrigerator is kind of the biggest issue. I think.
Yeah.
Um, we should talk sometime separate from this.
Yeah,
Maybe
because
this
I really want to get a big system for my home. I'm right in the middle of a renovation, and it's the perfect time to install some. Because when I talked to that person who said it was going to be like $20,000 for my system, he said that in order for me to be off the grid with that system, I'd have to basically have a big switch at the panel that says, now I want to be on solar. Now I want to be on, the grid. And that's fine if you're home, right? And you need
right,
power,
right.
but what you're talking about is much better to have specific plugs that are, this outlet is solar. And if this
Yeah,
is what you use it for. You,
absolutely. And this kind of gets into some political stuff too. The you have a right to make your own electric system, and it doesn't have to have anything to do with the grid.
yeah,
And but when you do tie into the grid, uh, you have to coordinate with your power company, and you certainly have to follow the local NEC code. Any installer would have to do that,
yeah,
and that makes sense. But uh, but last time I checked my constitution, you have a right to do anything that there's no law against.
yeah.
Uh, until your government has a reason to pass a law against it, and and so if you're pretty sure there's no law against it, it's good to just do things on your own and don't go asking permission and don't uh, and anyway, well, I'll
Well,
leave
that,
it alone.
that's my motto, right? Better to beg forgiveness than to ask permission.
There you go. Yeah. And
The rules to live by.
I mean, when you live, a lot of people live in the woods around here, different kind of situations, and I don't think it's generally a good idea before somebody who's living in a shack or a camp or you're like before they do anything, they go running down the town clerk and ask if they need permission, because when you ask an authority something like that, they're going to say no probably to start with, or they're going to say yes, you need permission,
Yeah,
because otherwise they're giving up power or they're just being careful. They just
right. It's the CYA move, right?
Yeah.
Well, first they're going to say, why are you doing living in a yurt? We're not sure that's legal. We got to
Yeah.
check that out first. Right?
Let's take a look at your septic system here.
Exactly. Exactly. Is that legal? Hold on there. Yeah. You opened up a big
Whole
can
can
of
of worms
worms.
here. Yeah.
Exactly. Not good.
Like, don't be stupid. I mean, don't go in there. Bring attention to yourself.
Exactly. So let's switch gears a little bit. Did
Sure.
you always do, I want to talk about your life now, the financial independence part we talk about with saving money on solar, but how
Yep.
about the long life part, enjoying your life? Did you always just do solar, or you got into this later in life when you wanted to do something you loved?
I'm going to tilt the screen a little bit here. I It's not a no. This I wouldn't say this is a late life thing. No, I first hitchhiked up here to Vermont in '76 to go to the social ecology program at Goddard College, and I was turned on by that right from the get go. Just hearing about it got me up here. I'd been going to college at a state university in Ohio, and another hitchhiker actually passed through and told me about this program and people learning about solar panels and organic gardening and windmills. And I thought, that's right on the money. I got to learn about that.
Yeah.
So it's been a passion of mine throughout my adult life.
Yeah.
I haven't always been in the situation to where I could do a lot with it, though. That, as I mentioned to you before, the first time I stumbled into solar was in 1990, 91. My former wife and I were developing a piece of land up in the woods, and we needed power, so we went that way. So it's actually I would say having this business now and doing more of this is it's more of an outgrowth of my lifelong passion. It's not a thing I started late or started recently, and also it's kind of an imperative to me. I mean, I look a lot at the state of the oceans and the Arctic ice, and the rate of extinction that's been accelerating, and things are looking rough to me in the future. And if we don't do everything we can, I think, I don't know, you die feeling guilty. I mean, that's kind of how I feel about it. So I just feel like it's an imperative to do everything I can. And I take issue sometimes when I hear younger people really laying the guilt on the baby boomers, so to speak. I'm a baby boomer. And when I hear the narrative of you guys laid this on us, now we have no future. I mean, it's way more nuanced and complicated than that.
Yeah.
We're all born into this set of arrangements. We don't have a choice. We were born into plastic land and,
Yeah, exactly.
and fossil fuel land. But once you know what's going on, yeah, you do have a choice. And I've known a lot of people who's struggling to do anything they can. And I feel like that's been my life too.
Yeah.
I do everything I can. It's as much as I hate plastic waste, and I've been kind of politically involved in that too. You can't buy anything without throwing away some plastic.
I know.
I opened up a jar of kimchi yesterday, and there's plastic around the rim that goes in the landfill. And so, yeah, this is. If you want, I'll talk a little bit about retirement and tying this into that.
Yeah, please.
I read some about Phil, F-I-L, and it's. I've always been very interested in getting out of debt way before retirement, and we did manage to do that. We made extra payments on our house for a good 10 years or so, and then my wife got some inheritance from her mom when she died, so we were able to go ahead and pay the house off. But that wouldn't have been so easy if we hadn't been paying extra. And we're really committed now because we're in early retirement. We both just retired from our jobs in the last 2 years. No debt. That's very important to me. In fact, I've always aspired to this ever since I read this book back in the 70s. I don't know if you ever heard of this. Helen and Scott Nearing.
I haven't.
They were the original homesteader hippies that came to Vermont in the 30s. They cashed in their, I think, teachers' pensions or something, and came up here and built a house from scratch with stones and garden. They're kind of communist, I think. They create a lot of social events around their homestead, and they wrote a book about it. And then the ski industry moved in around them, and they moved to Maine and did it all over again in their 50s.
Oh,
and
wow.
I saw them speak when Scott was he had to be in his 90s at least, at a NOFA conference back in the 70s, and Helen was a little younger, and then he lived to be well over 100, I think, and
Wow.
up in Maine, and they built their own stone house up there too. But I'm getting off track a little bit here. But one of their philosophies in this book is never spend a dollar you don't have, and I really do aspire to that. I mean, it's the last thing I would want to do starting a business would be go look for investors or GoFundMe's or anything like that. It's just, to me, it's just the road to hell is paved on good credit. I mean, and I'm going to plug another book. I have no financial interest in these, by the way. I know the guy that wrote this, Ron Koss and Arnie Koss. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep. I worked,
autograph copy.
Oh yeah. I worked with them in the early
Earth's
80s.
Best,
I
the
worked
Earth's
with Ron
Best
Koss.
Story.
Yep. And
Okay.
Ron Koss and his wife used to be the co-directors of a group home that I worked at around 1980, 81 in Moorhaven. So we all lived there for a while, so we got to know each other really well. And it was a group home for kids. But this is something Ron did after that experience. And in the 80s, he and his brother and their spouses started the first organic baby food company at national scale.
Okay.
And you can still see the brand on the supermarket shelves. But this is a great read for anybody thinking about starting a business who maybe they want to know about venture capital, getting investors. And it's actually, I think, a well-written book. It's kind of a gripper. It's not the kind of book I thought I would have read, but since I knew the guy, I bought it. And it's a page turner. I couldn't put it down. And it's kind of a horror show for like putting a dream into a business and then losing it all to the shark pool, so to speak.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because they wanted to go national to begin with. They made serious investments in a factory to build this baby food. They didn't think it would be viable to do a local small thing and grow, maybe because of the equipment investments or something like that. Yeah. But because they had to go pretty big to begin with, they took investments early on, and ultimately they just, every time times got rough, they had to go to the shark pool again, and every time they lost a little bit of control of their business, and to the end story where they just both got shoved out of their own business. And these are twins, by the way, Arnie and Ron.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And, who am I to say nobody should ever get investors? I can't really say that, but it doesn't work for me. I'm not going to do it. Then I guess that brings me to another philosophy I have, is to be upwardly and downwardly mobile in a business, because maybe it helps that I don't have to make a living at this, but I do need to not lose money at it.
Yeah.
At least that. And it'd be nice to make money. I made a little bit of money last year, by the way. But there's all kinds of stories about people who have a great idea and then suddenly they can't scale up. They can't handle the business when it takes off. Sometimes they recover and do great, but sometimes not.
Yeah.
And then downscaling to me is, this is kind of an experiment, my business model. And I always had a sense that I needed to be able to go down to like no sales for a while if I have to. And what can I afford at the bottom to keep this business going, so that when maybe spring comes or there's more interest, I can pick it up again. And I know exactly what it is. I know what my fixed costs are. I have a monthly insurance payment, a liability insurance, and then my web service, and I have a dedicated email. I mean, those things all together come to around $100 a month.
So you have to go get a paper route, right?
I have some income. Besides this, I have some retirement income, and we're not broke, so I figured I could afford $100 a month to keep the business ready. That's the extreme downscale. Yeah. And usually there's a few months of the year where maybe I don't make a sale, don't have any income. But and then the other expense that I have to watch out for is R&D. I've had to R&D everything I sell, and and usually I make something that's not going to make me any money, and it might cost me 400 or 800 bucks to make. And it's a prototype, it's a system. And then I got to tweak it, make it better. And,
Yeah.
and I have some advertising costs. That's not a fixed cost. that can ebb and flow.
Right.
But I've made bumper stickers, shopping bags. I've got business cards, and it seems like a couple $100 for the business cards go a long ways. And then I just tried for the first time, I think around now, there's Green Energy Times, I think it's called. Let's see. Yeah, this one. I have a little banner coming out in this.
Okay.
And that'll be interesting to see how that goes. They would love it if I just advertised every issue and spent hundreds of dollars, but it's kind of funny talking to the lady. She was great, by the way. I liked her sell job to me. But she sent me all the information. She was very forthright in everything she did. And I looked over the details, and I found the cheapest ad I could do, which is a little banner which is just room enough for maybe my logo and the website. And I said, yeah, that sounds doable, $95 for a couple months. And she was a little bit trying to talk me out of it. She goes, oh, but not too many people get those. You don't get much for it. And it's, we're thinking about even doing away with it. And I'm saying, well, I'm tiny solar Vermont.
If I have a big ad, that's just not right.
Right. Tiny's okay. I'm all about tiny, A tiny budget too for advertising.
Yeah, there's something wrong with having a full page ad for Tiny Solar Vermont. It just doesn't seem to fit.
Overkill. And on the upscale end of things, you've heard of Bees Wraps?
Yes.
Okay. Neat company from what I can tell.
Yep.
I ran into some of their product a few months back, or last year actually. Somebody gave me some of their product. I liked it. I thought, oh, great, I'm going to buy some of this. And I went to their website. Everything on the website was sold out.
Wow.
Everything. And then at the Tiny House festival event that you and I met at recently, the Bees Wrap happened to be sitting
right across from you. Right?
Yeah. So I got to talking to her, and I told her about this, and she said, we had just been featured on, it's like some web show. There was a kind of a high profile show. I don't think it was Oprah, but it would be like you'd been featured on Oprah or something like that.
Yeah.
So there was an interview and some good exposure on some kind of a high profile media outlet, and they got floored. They absolutely got floored. They got wiped out of inventory, and they couldn't recoup for a while. But they are now, I think, and they're probably a better company for it.
Yeah. Yeah, because that can be the kiss of death for a small company. They get overwhelmed, and people think, oh, there's no product, there's no customer service, and they don't want to come back. Mm-hmm. Especially if they just saw it on TV, if they haven't had a chance to actually, handle the product and understand what it actually is, and have a real introduction to it, like you could have had at the Tiny House Festival.
Mm-hmm. I kind of relating to that, in the early 80s, I was a manager for Domino's Pizza for a couple of years out in Ohio. I moved from here back to Ohio for 3 years, and that's my original home. Anyway, my brother was into management at Domino's, so it's something I did to make a living for a few years, and that's when I started my family. And okay, where are we going with this? Sorry, I lost my train of thought. We're
talking about bees wrap and scaling and all that kind of stuff.
Scaling up, yeah. Okay, yeah, here it is. We had these rushes at Domino's where you predictable. Every Friday, the store I managed in Trotwood, Ohio, was going to get blown away. And all 4 lines were going to light up for 3 hours, and we could never handle all the business we were getting. And usually Saturday too, sometimes Thursday, And then if you had a special event like the auto show in the mall across the street, or Super Bowl Sunday, again, blowing away, more business you can handle. And somebody explained this to me, and it was obvious too, that when during those worst times when you can't handle it, you're just struggling, you don't even have enough people to do it, and you can't take all the phone calls fast enough. That's your opportunity for growth. That's when some new people are trying you. And generally speaking, you've got some new customers in the door, and if they, every time they try you, you're getting blown away and you get bad service. It has to be that way in a restaurant too. Yeah. Some big event brings in double the normal amount of people into Julio's restaurant, and if they can offer good service at that time, maybe they'll grow by 10% after that event. Yeah. And so I think about that too in this business. If something throws a lot of business my way, I've got to do a fairly decent job of handling it, or otherwise there's no sense. It's just.
Yeah, exactly. I'm only good when there's no business. One customer at a time, please.
Right. But this pertains to my website and the concept of e-commerce. I've been slowly looking into that for the past years, and my worst nightmare would be to set it all up for e-commerce and then wake up in the morning and I have 10 new orders that I can't handle, in the right time frame, and they've already paid for them.
Exactly.
That can't happen. I can't do that. Yeah. I can scale up. I have a couple people interested in internships, but I think they'd be more than happy to turn that into paid work. Yeah. But I can't do that in 2 weeks. I can't scale up in 2 weeks. So I'm thinking about taking one person up on an internship just for education this winter. Then the next time I build a new system, she said she's interested in just coming in and watching how I do it. She really wants to learn how to do it. And then maybe we can talk about an arrangement where if I start to scale up with real business, come on in, let's pay you. Let's pay you a fair wage. And so that would be a good thing to do. E-commerce is something that I have a son that's doing pretty good in management in the resort industry in Colorado. He and I talk business strategy a lot, and he helped me see this too, that you can set limitations on your e-commerce. Like I could have a website that says, here, this is for sale, but I have one in stock. Yeah. And as soon as somebody buys that, the next person will see 0 in stock. Please check back.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't even want to do that until I'm really, really ready to go, and I have to answer some other questions about shipping these systems. And
yeah, that's true.
And a different pricing structure for buying the system without a battery. Shipping batteries is kind of ridiculous. It's in most cases, and I see other companies doing this. They typically, if they sell a small portable solar system, will sell it without the battery and leave it up to you to go get your own battery. Yeah, they're heavy, very expensive to ship, and some of them get into hazmat requirements.
Yeah.
But that would be the next big step for me, is to step up to e-commerce carefully.
So I was going to ask you, I was going to flip back to solar again, and now I'm having a mental block about what I was going to ask you about that. Oh gosh.
You seem like you had a lot of questions about how to keep it separate, how to do it separately from grid. Was it pertaining to that?
Well, that was definitely for my place. I wanted to be able to keep that separate and to be able to, but I think you've answered that as far as I like the idea of having dedicated plugs. I think that makes a lot of sense. And at this point in my renovation, it would be pretty easy to do that, I think, because I can take a whole, potentially I'll have to talk to my electrician, take a block, and instead of putting it into the regular panel, to put it into, it would be like a supplement, a different panel. Is that how it would work?
Yeah, it could, if you have an electrician helping you, he would do a good job wiring it, but it would be coming from your inverter.
Yeah.
And to that, it could be a panel, circuit panel if you want. Here's something just a concept to put into your head about that. Because I was actually just talking to my son yesterday. He's looking at buying a house in the town he lives in, Colorado. He's getting married next year, and
congratulations.
Yeah, it's really gonna be great. But and it'll be the first place he's had in Colorado with actual sunshine, and so we're talking about that naturally, and the idea of having a battery-based off-grid solar when you have the grid. There's some lifestyle issues to be taken into consideration. Battery-based solar requires some maintenance, depending on your choices. But if you have a flooded lead acid batteries, you need to check the water every now and then and add some distilled water. I don't mind doing that, and I still like flooded lead acid. I think it's the best bang for the buck. Most of my compadres in the industry are pushing lithium ion batteries now for solar. But for small economical solar, lithium ion are really expensive, a little more complicated. They don't have good recycling yet. They don't have a good in use. Of course, the counter argument to that is that they'll last longer. But anyway, they're also saying that by the time these lithium ions actually die, there'll be a developed recycling program. But I heard that about nuclear power plants too. And
that hasn't worked out.
Nope, it hasn't worked out too good. So it's I guess what I'm saying is that there's a little bit of a lifestyle component to having a battery-based solar system, a little more so than just grid tie. You have to kind of keep an eye on your batteries. You can get maintenance-free batteries like gel or sealed. You pay a little more per performance. You get a little less bang for your buck, a little more expensive, but they are easier to maintain. But the thing is, when you have a battery-based system, you're better off using it on a regular basis for something, and you'll save money doing that anyway. So maybe have, like if somebody, like my son is talking about having it's a duplex, he would own half the house. So maybe put some easy low-hanging fruit stuff on your battery-based system, like the porch light, hall lights, things that you don't use, you don't leave them on all night, just you use them intermittently. Yeah. Maybe set up chargers for your power tools and other things. I'm real big into battery powered things because you can easily charge them off solar. Right. You can choose when you charge them. Yeah. Set all them up to go off the solar. So you're leading a lifestyle where you're sort of in touch with your battery-based solar system, and you're saving a little money in the process. And then when you really need it, like the grid goes down, which it does from time to time, it's a smooth transition. You're already familiar with the other one. You know the perimeters, how much you can demand from those batteries overnight. And that's better than having a system that you don't want to think about. I actually know somebody like this who the guy had some money to throw around, so he built a pretty state-of-the-art solar system that was it was both grid tie and battery backup. This was in Cabot, Vermont. Mm-hmm. And nice, big, expensive bank of batteries in the basement because he wanted the whole deal. He had the money. He wanted grid tie and he wanted a backup, so he didn't have to worry about it. The first time the power seriously went out, the battery system didn't work. I would chalk it up to just not paying attention to it. He wasn't using it for anything on a regular basis, right. So he wasn't in touch with it. He didn't notice that some connection wasn't right or the batteries had gone down. So if you have a battery-based system, it's good to have something that you're using, and it can transition to your primary if you need it to do that. Or you can always it's fun to me to always find more and more things you can put on the battery system than because you save more money. It's a no-brainer.
I know, exactly. Hello.
Stop me if I'm using too much time, but there's one more story about that.
Tell me.
Okay, electric cars. To me, that's the holy grail of a battery-based system, is if you can charge your electric car on it, you're good. Yeah. Because when that's a biggie, it uses a lot of power. And when the zombie apocalypse starts, who's going to be cooler than the guy that's still driving his electric car when everybody else is, they're looking for an ox cart or something to get around.
Exactly. You're ready for the zombie apocalypse.
Absolutely. Yeah. Maybe you have gun plates,
Exactly. You're just going to have to outfit it so that you don't have any attack by the zombies. Yeah. Other than that, you're good.
You need crossbows. So it's, I had a customer approach me that, it's been about 2 years now, who he bought a Nissan Leaf and he lived in Woodbury and he had a pretty unreliable power. The further you go in the country around here, the more unreliable your power is. Some people it's not unusual to lose their power all night or,
Oh boy.
And so he wanted to be able to charge his Leaf. And so we did the research together and I came up with his particular Nissan Leaf required about 1,300 watts to charge. So he needed, if you want to keep it simple, he needed at least 1,300 watts of solar panels
Yeah.
To be able to charge it at least during the day while the sun's shining. That's a heavy draw on batteries at night, so we weren't even going there.
Yeah.
We figured he could use leftover power for lights and radios and stuff at night. So we designed and built a system that was about 1,500 and some watts, and we were, this was kind of a long-term project, and I designed it and sold him the parts, and then he worked with me to build it, so he learned how to do it. And it was great, and we were plugging in his car, it wasn't working. Man. So it was just blinking fault or something. We knew there was enough power in there, and sun was shining like crazy, And so little by little, we had to learn. And this is an active issue for me too, because I've had an electric car for 7 years, and I've never been able to charge it off my solar system. And it seemed like it just didn't like the power coming off that inverter. And so we finally narrowed it down to the grounding. His car needed to think it was grounded. It was a grounded electric system.
Okay.
Didn't have to actually be grounded. It needed to think it was. And so we ran ground wires off the outlet into the ground. That didn't work. Ran it from there to the nearest circuit breaker. It didn't work. Ran it from there to his inverter. It worked. Bingo. So that was a glorious moment when he could finally charge his car off the sun. And there's a little bit. Oh, go ahead.
No, that does seem like the ideal, right? You're not using, not to have to use fuel in your car at all.
There's a few caveats to that. Not to get people overly excited, because cars are, the batteries are getting bigger and bigger because customers are demanding that.
Right.
So part of the longer range in the newer cars is achieved through efficiency and better technology. But I got to say, a large part of it is achieved through just a bigger battery. And that's it's sort of a mixed thing, because it's bigger battery is good. It gets you farther, but it takes more electricity to charge it. Yeah. So now my customer, I can use his name. He wouldn't mind. Paulo. He went out last year and bought, he sort of upgraded his car. He bought a newer model of Nissan Leaf, brand new. And his range went from 90 some miles to 100 and some, maybe 130, 150.
Yeah.
So he's pretty happy with that. He can commute farther and drive farther. But the new charging rate is about 1,500 watts. So we enlarged his system a little bit. We put another panel in there, a fifth panel. Had to tweak the wiring a little bit, check the size, new charge controller. Long story short, had to buy a few new things. He was okay with his current battery bank, but so we got the power up to where it works, and everything sounds groovy, right? But the new car or the old car would take maybe 15 hours to go from 0 to 100%.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, you don't ever do it like that. You don't let your car go all the way 0 before you charge it usually.
Yeah.
So realistically, an 8-hour day would be pretty substantial for the old car, for him. The new car takes 30 hours to go from 0 to 100, just because it has a bigger battery. Yeah. So he's, it's not very realistic. He can't charge for 3 days.
Right, just to go to work.
Right. He does work still, and he has kids, he's picking his kids up at school and stuff. Yeah. So it's still nice for him to know that he can charge it there. And he does on a sunny day. If he's off and not away, he'll plug it in on a sunny day and get 8 hours of charge and top it off a little bit. But and in a real zombie apocalypse, he's probably not going to worry about going to work. So maybe he could charge for 3 days and then
make a run somewhere.
Yeah, make it run somewhere for ammo or whatever it is, like garden seed, or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's charging a car at 120 volt, typical household. That's commonly known amongst us electric car people as the slow charge. Yeah. It's the home charge, which is not to be ignored, because that's the one anybody can do in any house. Uh, but the way most people with electric cars do most of their charges is the next step up, the 240 volt,
240 volt, yeah.
which is most of the commercial charging stations. And you can get one like that put in your house. If you're trying to do it totally off solar, though, if you want to go 240 volt, now you're getting big.
Yeah.
You've got to have a roof full of panels,
Yeah, yeah.
And that's getting too big for tiny solar Vermont. I don't want to go.
Yeah. Pass that off.
Yeah, I'll pass that off. I'll send that to Big Solar Vermont.
Yeah. So how about the tax benefits that you typically see with a commercial solar?
You know, I don't go there much for the federal tax is the main one that's been available for since the Bush administration, actually.
Yeah.
I don't go there much with my folks, and I maybe could more, but it's the typical system that I sell is the one that's ready to made. The most expensive one is $707.
It's not even worth it.
Yeah, for that, and it's a percentage of that. It's up to 30% of the system.
I think it's down now. It's starting to decrease. I think it might only be 25 or 22% now.
Yeah, it's going to go away. But I did run into something. One of my customers showed me that. 1 second, I'll pull it over for you. I just found out about this last year, and in Vermont, if you buy a solar system for home use, you can, if you fill out this form S3E. Yeah, it's just a kind of a one page state form.
Yeah.
Then you can avoid paying sales tax on the system.
Okay.
And so that could be nice. I mean, that was essentially a way for me to lower the price by $30 on a lot of my systems, or even more if I help build a bigger system. Yeah. There's a little bit of a definition who qualifies for it. I mean, I don't think you can just get parts for somebody else or something like that there. It's got to be your own home off-grid solar system. Well, it can be on-grid too. There's a provision for that. But so I've been doing that lately. I feel a little guilty because I'm not contributing to the Vermont economy with sales tax like I used to before, but not too guilty though.
They should be able to hobble on without you.
Yeah. So there is that, and that's the only direct financial benefit I see Vermont doing. Vermont is pretty green in a lot of ways, and we have a lot of nice, well-meaning legislation, but they don't really put their money where their mouth is too much in the legislature. Sorry to say that, but
they're not alone in that.
Yeah, but they allow a lot of green stuff to happen. They don't regulate it oppressively, like say Arizona or Florida. Those states and some others have laws that actively suppress solar power.
Oh, interesting, because there's so much sun.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's crazy. It's.
I think we know who lobbied for that legislation.
It's power companies. Yeah, absolutely. They practically. Florida has some sort of a law where it's illegal to be off grid.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, now it's been a couple of years since that happened. I haven't been keeping up with every detail of it. Presumably, there's people fighting against it. But yeah, it was the power companies coming in and just getting the legislature to, make people want, if they have power, be on the grid.
Wow.
Yeah, and there are people who would do that even in Vermont if they could. There's some people who believe that you shouldn't have the right to be off grid, and I stand opposed to that way of thinking.
I would say, why shouldn't you be able to be off grid? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's if they're worried about safety, well, I'm all about safety, but it's I don't know, I don't think that's the motivation behind it. It's more like
well, it's not endangering them. If you have solar, how is it hurting them?
It's kind of a threat to power, I think. It's like if you can have your own baby at home, if you can make your own power, anything you can do on your own takes power away from other people who would tell you how to do it or regulate it or make money off of you doing it,
Right, yeah. I'm all for that. All right, Joe, any parting words, anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask?
Let's see, I made a few notes. We covered a lot. No, I think we're pretty good. The um, I just you it looks to me like you talk a lot to people about good financial planning for later in life, and the uh, I mean, I would say to anybody who's young enough to do it, just get out of debt and stay out of debt.
Yeah.
Because the most miserable people I know that are around my age or older are people that they're just screwed financially to start with. I mean, they go into retirement with not even able to retire in many cases.
Yeah.
And then if you're living off a credit card, you're never really going to be able to do things you want to do. And
Right.
later on. So I know it's easier said than done. Some people just get in situations they can't help. I know that, but I also know people who just will use credit cards to buy Christmas gifts every year, and and there's a lot of stuff that can be avoided later in life and problems.
Yeah, exactly. And we're coming up to the holidays, so make somebody a gift.
Absolutely, yeah.
You
I,
know,
I
something from the heart, make them a cake or apple pie or, a little floral arrangement, and then mean a lot more to them anyway than some crap that you get at the store.
I mean, you can even do a certificate. Like I suggested this to my son. He was really broke last year for a while. He's out of work, and uh, he wanted to give a gift to my wife, maybe for Christmas or her birthday, and and I said, every time the power gets interrupted in her car, her radio goes back to this stupid thing where it's blinking all these colors, and so you can choose the best color, and you just can't use the clock or anything, and it's terrible to figure out, and this happens every daylight savings time. And I said, what if you gave her a certificate to be on call to go fix her clock, her radio, anytime she needs it? She would love it.
She'd love it. Absolutely.
That's a gift, a real gift. I mean, it
I put
doesn't
that
cost
on my Christmas list this year. I would like my brother-in-law is a carpenter, and I said, help building my deck this summer. That would be the best gift
Oh
you could
yeah,
give me. It
oh
would save
yeah,
me a ton of money, and it would just cost you time,
yeah,
So we'll
yeah,
see if they choose that one. I hope so.
yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does require a little more thought, and you have to know the person a little bit and know what they would like. But, talk about, it's just so much more meaningful gift and so much more well received, and it doesn't cost you any cash. So,
Oh yeah, and I see people too who use their house as a ATM machine, and that's just so sad. Oh my gosh, it's if you're one guy I know, he's 47 or 48, already done 2 second mortgages on his house, and I know they took a vacation to Italy on that, and it's you know it's going to come up sooner than you think, and you'll have no equity,
I don't know.
and
I
then
don't
things
know.
can happen like the Great Recession, where your house, you're underwater suddenly,
Right. Exactly.
and
Well, at least here in the Boston area, it seems like we're at the top of the housing market. So we are expecting a correction. I'm expecting a correction. I don't know if people who are cashing in their homes are expecting a correction, but everybody who's, I'm a real estate agent, we look at the market and it is going to correct.
oh
Absolutely.
yeah,
There's way too much supply.
yep.
And, that's going to have an impact on your home price. I promise.
Right.
So don't
But
do
you
it.
you remember the sad stories, when the housing bubble crashed before.
Yeah.
People just, I mean, I knew a few around here, but I know other parts of the country it's worse. I mean, oh my God, some of these people are just pitiful,
Yeah.
They ruin their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, just an hour from Boston in Worcester, there were homes that were selling. They had sold, basically they lost 2/3 of their value. So if it was a $180,000 condo, it's now worth 60,000, and they couldn't sell them at that price.
No,
You couldn't give them away. And it's, and people say, oh, we didn't see it coming. Well, how did you not see it coming? When I can walk into the bank and they say, stated income, stated asset, those were the days. How much do you make? Oh, I said to the guy, how much do I have to make to get this loan? And he said 60,000. I said, oh, that's great. I make 65,000. I was making like 25,000 at the time,
really?
Yeah. They just said it was all in the honor system. I'm like, you cannot give people mortgages on the honor system. I'm sorry.
Well, it seems a little different now, though.
Yeah.
I think the banks are scared now to do that kind of stuff. In fact, now it's hard for young people to buy houses because
I know.
they're so careful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's loosened up a little bit, but it is still, it's still tough. Definitely. But yeah, it's a nice message that it is possible to get out of debt and that it's great when you get to be a certain age when you don't want to, like, you're able to do the solar instead of, being a Walmart greeter or whatever kind of thing that would
Oh
give
yeah.
you some kind of, benefits and reliable income. That's what it's all about, right? That's
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's if you've got your health, and you go into your 60s or so, and I mean, you can live to be you can live 30 more years and be active and do things. I mean,
I know.
but uh, but not if you have a heavy burden of debt, or if you don't take
Right.
care of yourself too. I mean, that's once you lose your health, everything's pretty much gone anyway. But,
Yeah. That's when I do my planning, my financial planning. My aunt lived to be 105 and she was still living independently at that time. So I'm like, okay, I have to be able to live for at least, I got to be able to support myself for at least, 50 more years. So
yeah, yeah,
I can't,
that's a good way
can't
to look at it. Yeah.
to have a
I,
reliable income stream for 50 years.
I have an aunt in Ohio, a great aunt actually, who she uh, she grew up before Social Security existed, and when she never liked the idea of Social Security, she thought it was charity, which is just her mindset of a lot of people back
Yep.
then.
Yep.
But she took on a career, I think after her husband died, of wallpapering houses, and completely supported herself till she died. And uh, she didn't live to be 100, but she was probably well into her 80s anyway.
Yep.
She never took a dime from anybody, never took any Social Security.
Yep. But loving what you do, just speak, that goes to your mental attitude. And that, I think, helps to prolong your life when you're happy, when you're passionate about something, when you're, focusing on something other than, oh, my knees hurt, whatever.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. I worked at the state hospital for 8 years as a psychiatric technician,
Oh, wow.
and there were a lot of long-term employees there because it's good good state work, good
Yeah.
benefits. And
Yeah.
uh, I knew several people in those 8 years who retired usually after 30, 35 years, and then came right back and worked as a temp doing the same work. And it's kind of stressful work, and it can be dangerous at times. We had pretty high acuity patients, and I'm just shaking my head like, why in the hell would you want to do this? And you don't get as much respect as a temp, the same benefits, you're a little less pay even, and and typically they would say, well, I just need to stay busy. But I think in some cases it was more like, you're too far in debt,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have too much debt, because nobody in their right mind wants to do this in retirement. God, I took an early retirement with the state at 55, and it was already still starting to feel a little dangerous to me.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes we had to wrestle with people that got violent, and
Yeah.
you know, uh, or you'd have a mandatory double shift. You'd have to be held over sometimes, work an extra 8 hours.
Right. Right. Because you can't, it's not safe to go home for whatever reason or whatever.
Maybe I
Can't
could have
leave.
kept doing it for another 10 years, but I
But
didn't want
why?
and
Yeah.
so I was able to get my medical and dental for life, that
Nice.
retirement, and then a small pension, and then now I have Social Security, and we're out of debt anyway. So
Yeah.
and,
Exactly.
and so it's it's, or like you said, a Walmart greeter or something like that.
Well, sometimes I think it's not even that they might need the money. Some people, I think it's just they don't have any hobbies. They don't have anything that they care about, that they're passionate about. So they just have to get out and see people so they're not depressed all day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's understandable. I guess I can't relate to it. I have a list this long all the time of things I want to do.
I
And when
know.
I'm done talking to you, I'm going to design a system for a guy that at a hunting camp, and come up with a price quote for him. And
Yeah,
that's just the beginning. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff to do.
exactly. I know. That's my life. I'm like, oh gosh, like what do I do in the course of a day? Like just don't even get me started. And it's
Well,
all, but it's
I,
all
I,
labor of love.
I
It's
can
all
see something
fun.
for you to do right there. I see there's a roofing,
Yeah,
ceiling.
I know, right? When we start here, I can sheetrock my ceiling. Not quite ready for that yet, unfortunately, but very close, very close. And hopefully before the winter gets too much more advanced.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Did you build your own house?
No, I took it's basically was like two beach cabins that got cobbled together
Mhm.
about 70 years ago. And I gutted it, they were stuck together and cobbled together. And I gutted them out and I'm turning it back into like a two-family house.
I
So
bet you got a great deal on this. I'm not
I
asking how
did.
much, but I bet you
I
because
did. It's right
you're in,
across the street from the beach, and it's gonna be, and it's so basically like two tiny homes side by side. It's be about one will be almost 500. It'll probably be like a 500 square foot house and a 700 square foot house side by side. And then I'm gonna put them on Airbnb, and you know, when somebody's living in my part of the house, I'm just gonna go do a little couch surfing and
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, it'll be fun.
We pay for
It'll be
itself.
fun. Yeah, exactly.
And I bet
So
you'll be paid off anyway. But go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say, as far as you know, later on, I'll add an introduction to the show and stuff like that. So if you can just send me your bio or just what you want me to say about you, so people
Uh,
can.
yeah, I've got a couple bios I've used before that the you a certain size, or does it matter?
No, it doesn't matter. I'm just I'll put also links on the website getyourfill podcast.com. There'll
Mhm.
be links to all the books you talked about, all the companies you talked about,
No
a
kidding.
link to your company, and then any other information that you want to put on there. And there's also be a transcript of the show.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, hopefully I didn't ramble on too much.
No, you were great. And you know, I had Savannah, the editor, will just take out anything that she thinks is just like
Straight.
too
Yes.
much.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
like, oh, there was like a 5 minute there or whatever. We'll take that
Yeah.
out. So
Right.
so
Yeah.
yeah, she'll take care of that. And then yeah, she can cut that out.
So
The
get you filled. What was that again? That website?
It's getyourfillpodcast.com.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to go there and check it out. I found you online. I'm not sure if I was there, but I saw a couple of your videos talking about your 105-year-old aunt.
Yeah. There's actually a little clip of her on the very first episode of the podcast.
I
So
saw that. I did. Yeah.
yeah. So you were on the website.
Yeah.
You might have been on because that's also on the EYIMbook.com.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, two different URLs go to the same place, but
Okay.
yeah, so you can do that, and then this should air December 8th.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, I'll check it out. I've got about a one-page bio I can send.
Perfect. That'd be great.
And feel free to edit it if you want to or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, I'll just pick and choose when I do the verbal, but I'll put the whole thing online.
Great. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for inviting me. This was fun.
And I'm definitely going to be in touch with you about my solar system, and I think I have to do it fairly soon. So what would I just send you, like, would I send you like a picture of the house, or, you know, some ideas so you could help me design it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that speeds it up is if you send me an idea of what you want, what power load you have, what you'd like to use. It could be a rough approximation, but it maybe lists the devices and how much power they use, and maybe an estimate of how long they would typically be on in one day, day or night, in a 24-hour period. So if I had something like that to go on, I'd be more than happy to just design a perspective system for you and just send you some perimeters. And if you had any idea how much sun you have per day, that helps too. What your chance of sun is, but you may not really know it in this situation. And if we went a little further with this and you're interested, I could run down there and take a look too and set the machine up.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That would be awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Because I have a pretty big and pretty flat roof. So I'll send you some pictures and you can take a look at it. John, this is Joe from Tiny Solar Vermont.
Oh, hello, Joe.
Hi. Is it Don?
Yeah. John, yeah.
John. Hi, John. Yeah. If you want to send me an email and tell me anything you want to about power needs or situation, and we'll just get a dialogue going, and I can give you some ideas what you'd be looking at.
All right, great. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks. Bye.